I gave my whole life to that man. Thought 30 years of loyalty, of dinner tables, family trips, sleepless nights by his hospital bed, and in return, he gave me a lie so big it shattered everything I believed about love. One night I saw him, holding hands with another man, smiling the way he used to smile at me. I wasn't just a wife. I was his shield. His cover for a life I never knew he was living, and the worst part, I didn't find out from him. I found out from a letter. A letter. Addressed to someone named Ethan. How many years did he love me with a mask on? And how many years did I sleep beside a stranger? If you've ever been lied to by someone you trusted with your soul, this story is for you. And if life's ever made you ask, was it ever real? Or was I just convenient? Then I hope you'll stay. Before we go on, don't forget to subscribe. So even if life gets busy, you won't miss the rest of this story. Or the ones that might speak to your heart, because sometimes the truth doesn't just break you, it sets you free. They called us the perfect couple. At church potlucks, people would smile and say, there they are, the Andersons, 30 years and still going strong. I used to smile back. Used to believe it too. Because from the outside we looked like everything people dreamed of. We had a beautiful home in Vermont. A golden retriever named Rosie who always sat by the porch. 2 grown children with college degrees and stable jobs. And David was the man who brought me coffee every morning, even when he was tired. Even when I was angry, he would still slide the mug beside me and whisper, cream, no sugar. Just how my girl likes it. How could I not believe in us? How could I not believe in him? The truth is, you don't notice the small cracks in the glass when the sun hits just right. But eventually, the light fades, and all you're left with is the silence. It started with the distance. David began coming home later, stopped humming in the kitchen like he used to. He hugged me, but it felt like a formality, like an old habit, not a feeling. One night I tried something simple. I wore the blue nightgown he always said made me look like a movie star. He didn't even look up from his phone. I asked, is something wrong, David? He replied, I'm just tired, Alina. Don't read into it, but I did. I couldn't help it. One morning I went to do laundry, and I found a scarf in his coat pocket. It wasn't mine, and it didn't smell like perfume. It smelled like cologne, the kind men wear to impress someone special. I laughed to myself. Not because it was funny, but because I realized I'd spent 30 years of my life, never once considering that my husband might not be into women, but even then I didn't want to believe it. We were the Andersons after all. I told myself it must belong to a friend, a coworker, maybe even one of our kids. I folded it, put it back, closed the closet door like I was closing the thought itself, but something stayed. Something didn't sit right. That's when the dreams started. Strange ones. Me walking into a room and David disappearing behind a door I couldn't open. Every night I told my daughter about it during brunch one Sunday. She laughed and said, maybe Dad's just being secretive about your anniversary gift. I laughed too. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe that. But deep down, something was waking up inside me. Something that had been quiet. For too long, I started noticing more. The way he panicked when I asked to borrow his phone. The name Ethan popping up on our phone bill 3, 4, 12 times. The way he smiled while reading messages when he thought I wasn't looking. One afternoon, I walked into the living room and caught him watching a video. He slammed the laptop shut like a teenager caught watching something inappropriate only. He's 55, and I'm not his mom. There was a moment of silence between us, thick and loud and painful. He said, don't you trust me? And for the first time in my life, I couldn't answer. Sometimes the heart knows things before the mind is ready to admit them. I told myself I was being paranoid. I even prayed about it, but prayer didn't erase the voicemail I found that night. Or the voice that said, missed you already. Same place, next weekend. It was a man's voice and it sounded ... happy, at peace. I sat on the floor of our laundry room, surrounded by unfolded clothes. I remember Rosie the dog coming up and resting her head on my knee, as if she knew. I cried into her fur for 20 minutes straight, and all I kept thinking was, who is he, David? And who am I to you? If this story reminds you of something you've felt but never said out loud, take a moment to subscribe so you can come back when you're ready, because you're not alone, and some truths are easier to face together. A few days after the voicemail, I told myself I'd let it go. I really tried. I baked David's favorite apple pie, set the table just the way he liked, forks on the left, napkin folded into a triangle, lit a candle for ambience, even though it was just the two of us. When he came home, he looked surprised. Wow, he said. What's the occasion? No occasion. I smiled. Just wanted to make a nice dinner. He kissed my cheek. A quick, polite kiss. Then he sat down, pulled out his phone, and scrolled through it the entire meal. Not one bite of the pie, not one compliment about the candlelight. Not even a, "How was your day?" And still, I smiled. Because that's what I'd trained myself to do, smile, even when my heart was starving. After dinner, he left his phone on the table while he went to shower. Something about the way he placed it face down, screen toward the table, made my stomach twist. I knew. I shouldn't. I knew what kind of woman that made me, but I picked it up just for a second. Just one glance, the lock screen was lit with a message. "Thanks for last night. Still thinking about your cologne?" My fingers went cold. I set the phone down like it was on fire, back in its place, just like he left it when he came back, towel around his shoulders. I asked, "Who's Ethan?" He froze for half a second. That half second told me everything. Then he smiled. "Oh, work friend. He's helping me with a marketing project." I nodded, pretended to believe it. But something inside me had cracked. The next morning, I did laundry again. Because that's what you do when life feels like it's falling apart. You cling to routines. His coat was in the hamper. I checked the pockets like I always do, and there it was. A scarf. Dark gray, cashmere, soft, expensive. Definitely not mine. I lifted it to my nose. It smelled warm like cedar. A hint of something sweet. Vanilla, maybe. Definitely not my husband's usual scent. David wore clean, sharp colognes. This was softer. More ... intimate. I stared at that scarf for a long time. Held it like it had answers. You know those moments when your brain tries to find any explanation but the truth? Maybe it's our son's. Maybe it's a client's. Maybe David borrowed it because it was cold, but my heart was done lying to me. I folded the scarf, placed it back where I found it. Then I walked outside and sat on the porch swing with Rosie. She curled up beside me and I whispered, "Rosie, I think Daddy has someone else." She licked my hand and let out a sigh like she understood. I actually laughed. Can you believe that? There I was, 52 years old, talking to a dog about how my husband might be cheating on me with a man, and somehow it was Rosie who made me feel the most heard. Later that week, I tried talking to David again. I said, "I miss you, us, the way we used to laugh." He gave me a tight smile, the kind people give when they don't want to tell you the truth. Then he said, "Maybe we've both just changed. Changed like we were hairstyles or cell phone plans." I stared at him and thought, no, I haven't changed. I'm still the woman who kissed you goodnight for 3 decades. The one who sat with you when you lost your job. The one who cheered when you got promoted. I didn't change. You just stopped loving me and started loving someone else. And that someone wears expensive cologne. There comes a point when your heart stops wondering and your mind starts needing proof. I reached that point one Friday afternoon, sitting alone in the living room while David claimed he was at an extended client dinner. I'd heard that phrase before. Same tone. Same vague schedule. Same silence when I asked who the client was, so this time I didn't ask. I called a friend instead. Her name was Pam, divorced twice. Funny as hell. And the only person I knew who would say exactly what needed to be said. I told her everything. The scarf, the messages, the voicemail. She didn't gasp or cry or act shocked. She just said, "Honey, ... it's time to find out." Want me to call someone I know? I knew what she meant. Private investigator. Discreet. Fast. Quiet. My chest tightened. Was I really about to follow my husband? What kind of wife does that? But then I remembered what kind of husband lies so well. So I said yes. The next few days were agony. I went through the motions like I always did. Made dinner, did laundry, answered texts from the kids. Smiled when David kissed my forehead and left the house in that same navy coat. But inside I was screaming. Then ... I got the call. Pam's friend had followed David. He didn't go to a client dinner. He didn't go to a work meeting. He went to a cabin by the lake with Ethan. They stayed overnight, cooked dinner together, sat on the porch swing, laughing, held hands under the stars, and then they kissed. I don't remember what I said to Pam after she told me. I just remember staring at my coffee, watching the cream swirl in circles. Feeling like my whole life was spinning with it that night. I couldn't sleep, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to the cabin. It was a quiet road, wrapped in trees. Almost beautiful if you didn't know what it meant. I parked. A little ways down, waited ... I saw them. David, my husband, holding Ethan's face in both hands, looking at him like he was the only man in the world. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there, staring through the windshield, frozen. Then ... I laughed. The kind of laugh that sounds like crying, because in that moment, everything made sense. All the little things, the distance, the cologne, the scarf, the empty bed, the too good to be true perfection. It all added up. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure or paranoid or needy. I was right, but God. Being right had never felt so wrong. I drove home at 2 a.m., didn't say a word. When David came back the next day, he kissed me on the cheek, said, "Sorry, I'm late. Traffic was awful." I smiled. "Long night." He nodded. "You know how it is. Double quotes, yes. Yes. I do." Later that evening, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Took off my wedding ring. Just for a second, just to see what my hand looked like without it. It looked lighter, almost like it was never supposed to be there. Rosie barked at that exact moment, making me jump. She waddled into the bathroom, sat by my foot, and stared up with those big dumb eyes. I bent down and whispered, "If you tell anyone, I'll deny everything." She tilted her head, and for the first time in days, I smiled without faking it. Even heartbreak needs a moment to breathe. 3 days after the cabin, I sat across from David at our kitchen table, same table where we celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, and ordinary Tuesdays with takeout pizza. Only this time there were no candles, no wine, no warmth, just silence. And a husband who didn't know I knew. I looked at him. He was scrolling through his phone like always. Like the past 30 years had meant nothing. Like the world hadn't cracked open in front of me 3 nights ago. I cleared my throat. He looked up, startled. "Hey, you okay?" I nodded. Then asked, "Do you love him?" The color drained from his face. He didn't say, "What are you talking about?" Didn't play dumb. Didn't pretend. He just sat there, still, silent. Then he said, "Is this the part where you yell, throw things, call a lawyer?" I stared at him. "Is this the part where you lie?" He sighed, rubbed his temples. Then he looked at me and said words I never thought I'd hear from the man I married. "I never stopped loving you, Alina, but not the way you deserved to be loved." My breath caught. He continued, "I tried. For so long I tried. I told myself I could be what you needed, what the world expected, what my family expected." Then he paused and whispered, "But when I met Ethan, I realized I've been pretending. For most of my life, I wanted to scream, to cry, to run. But instead, I just whispered, 'So, I was your what? Your cover story?'" His eyes filled with tears. "No, you were my best friend. My comfort, my safe place, but not, my truth. That hurt worse than any lie, because it wasn't cruel. It was honest, painfully, deeply honest." He reached across the table, but I pulled my hands back. "I couldn't pretend anymore. You made me think I was crazy," I said. "You looked me in the eye and lied. For years," he nodded. "I was afraid of losing everything, of losing you," I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. "You lost me anyway." There was a long pause. Then he said, "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, but I was never the best thing for you. Somehow, that felt true, and it hurt like hell." We sat in silence again, just us and the ticking kitchen clock. And Rosie, who barked once, like she was trying to break the tension. David actually smiled. "Even the dog's judging me," he muttered. That made me snort. I didn't mean to, but it slipped out. I shook my head, wiping tears from my cheeks. "You're lucky I'm too tired to throw this mug at you," he chuckled. "That's fair." Another pause. Then I asked, "Why didn't you just tell me years ago?" He looked at me with a sadness I hadn't seen before. "Because I didn't know how. Because I didn't know who I was. Because I didn't want to hurt you, and because I was a coward." And in that moment, I believed him. I didn't forgive him, but I believed him. And part of me, was tired of being angry, because what do you do when the man you built your life with, the man you trusted, tells you he never meant to lie, but lied anyway? You breathe, you let the weight of truth settle in your bones, and you decide what comes next. If you've ever heard a truth that shattered your world, take a deep breath and hit subscribe. Sometimes the story doesn't end where you thought it would. Sometimes, it begins again. With you. I always thought betrayal had a sound, like glass breaking, or a door slamming, or maybe a scream. But when Lisa told me the truth, it sounded like a whisper, like something too ashamed to be said out loud. We were sitting on her back porch, 2 glasses of iced tea between us, birds chirping like nothing in the world had gone wrong. I'd finally worked up the courage to tell her everything. About David, about Ethan, about the scarf, the messages, the kiss. She didn't gasp, didn't shout. She just stared into her glass and said, "Alina, I've known for a while now." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" She looked up, eyes already glistening. "I didn't mean to hide it. I just, I didn't know how to tell you." The porch suddenly felt colder. "You knew?" I asked again, voice shaking, fingers tightening around my glass. She nodded. I found out about a year ago. David confided in me. He was scared. Alina, scared of losing everything, especially you. I stood up, too fast. The chair scraped loudly against the wood, making Rosie, who had followed me everywhere lately, jump a little. You mean to tell me, ... My husband told you he's been lying to me for years and you said nothing? Lisa reached for me. Alina, please, no, I snapped. Don't. Alina, please me. I couldn't believe it. Lisa, my best friend. The woman who held my hair back when I had the stomach flu, who brought casseroles when my mother died, who stood beside me at my wedding. She knew, and didn't tell me. She sat back wiping her face with her sleeve. I thought I was protecting you, I thought. Maybe it would all pass. That he'd come to his senses. That it wasn't serious. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that startled even me. He kissed him on a porch swing. Lisa held him like I never existed. She closed her eyes. I didn't know it had gone that far. But you knew enough, I said. You knew he wasn't who he said he was. And you let me live a lie. There was a long pause. The kind that feels like a goodbye, she said. I was trying to protect everyone, but I ended up hurting you the most. And she was right. That was the worst part. Not just the lies, but the silence. Because silence is just betrayal in slow motion. I turned to leave, heart pounding. Rosie trotted behind me like a loyal soldier. Lisa called out, Alana, please, don't let this be the end. I stopped, didn't turn around. Then I said the only thing I could. You were supposed to be my friend, not his. I drove home with tears streaming down my cheeks, mascara smudged, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I'd lost my husband. Now I was losing my best friend. It was like my whole life was being stripped down to the bones. And maybe that's what grief is. Not just the loss of people, but the loss of illusions. That night I curled up on the couch with Rosie, turned off. My phone turned off the world, and for a second, I imagined what it might feel like to start over. Not with someone new, but with myself. Rosie rested her head on my lap. I looked down at her and whispered, Well, girl, looks like it's just us now. She gave a soft snore in response. I smiled through the tears. At least one soul in this house still chose me. A week after I found out Lisa had known, David came home early. That alone was strange enough, but what truly surprised me was the way he looked. Tired, older than he had the week before. Like whatever mask he'd worn all these years had finally cracked and he didn't have the energy to fix it. He stood in the doorway holding a small box in his hands. Alina, he said, do you have a minute? I didn't answer, just walked into the kitchen. He followed. We sat again. Same table. Same silence. Then he slid the box toward me. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to Ethan. Some old, yellowed with time. Some fresh, written on crisp paper with David's unmistakable handwriting. He said softly. I started writing him before I ever met you. I froze. What? Do you mean? He swallowed. I met Ethan when I was 21. I was broke, living out of my car. I'd just lost my dad and I had no one. No direction, no hope. His voice cracked, and then Ethan showed up. He gave me food, a place to stay, a reason to try. He never asked for anything, just offered kindness. He paused. We fell in love, quietly, secretly. I thought it was everything. I looked down at the letters. So many years of him poured out on paper, while I'd been writing grocery lists and Christmas cards. David continued. But then my mother found out. She gave me an ultimatum. You want a family? You want a future? Then you end this, or I cut you out completely. He looked at me, eyes shining. I was scared. I didn't want to lose her, or disappoint her. I was weak. I asked quietly, So, you left him. He nodded. I walked away from the only person who ever really knew me, and chose a life that looked right even when it didn't feel right. And then, he said something I wasn't prepared for. I never divorced you, Alina, because I was trying to protect him. I frowned. What? He leaned forward. If I divorced you, it would mean making everything public. And Ethan's family, his job, his reputation, it could all fall apart. He's not out, not fully, and he's already lost enough because of me. I stared at him. 30 years of lies, of pretending, of playing happy family. And all along, it wasn't just about fear. It was about guilt. You stayed married to me, I said slowly, to keep his secret. David nodded. And yours, he whispered. You didn't deserve the storm. I thought, if I just stayed, I could hold everything together. I shook my head. But you didn't hold anything together, David. You just froze time and expected me to smile through it. He looked away. I stood up, walked to the window, watched Rosie chase a butterfly across the yard. Then I asked, did you ever love me, even a little? He turned toward me with all the parts of me that could, but never with the part that mattered most. That answer broke something in me because it wasn't cruel. It was honest, and it made me feel like an extra in my own story. I turned back to him. You could have trusted me years ago. I know, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I was a coward, and I'm sorry. I nodded slowly, then asked, what happens now? He didn't have an answer, so I gave one for both of us. I'm not your shield anymore, David. You need to live your truth, and I need to live mine. We sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't filled with pain, just truth, and the possibility of something new. 3 days later, a letter arrived. Not a text, not an email. A real letter folded neatly, placed in an envelope with my name written in David's handwriting. I held it for a long time before opening it because sometimes you're not sure if you want answers or just silence. But eventually, curiosity wins. Inside was a single page. Alina, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I owe you something more than words. For 30 years, you stood by a man who wasn't whole. You poured your love into a life I couldn't fully meet you in. I want to give you back your freedom legally, emotionally, spiritually. Enclosed is a copy of the divorce papers. I've already signed. I've waived every claim. The house is yours, the savings. Rosy Tooth, though I'd ask for occasional photos of her, I'm also making a public donation to the women's shelter your mother loved. In your name, because your strength deserves to be honored. I'm not doing this to be noble. I'm doing it because it's time. Time for both of us to live honest lives. Thank you for everything you gave me. For every cup of coffee, every laugh, every quiet morning. I didn't deserve you, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the peace you gave me. David, I reread it twice. Then I cried. Not out of sadness, not even out of anger, but because for the first time in 3 decades, I felt free. Truly, deeply free. I walked out to the porch with Rosie. She looked up at me, wagging her tail. Sensing something had shifted, I whispered, we're gonna be okay, girl. That weekend, David stopped by, not to beg, not to explain, but to say goodbye. He brought a small photo album. Inside were pictures from our early years road trips. Holidays, birthdays, random Tuesdays where I wore sweatpants and he thought I looked radiant. He handed it to me and said, I wanted you to keep the memories, because even if they weren't whole for me, they were real, for you, and that matters. I nodded, holding the album to my chest. Then he knelt down, hugged Rosie tight, and kissed her between the ears. She wagged, gently confused, but calm. David looked up at me one last time. I hope one day we can laugh again, even if it's just from opposite sides of peace. I smiled. A real one, maybe, I said. Then he left, and just like that, a chapter closed. But what surprised me most was what came after. The quiet didn't feel empty. The house didn't feel cold. It felt mine. My breath, my rhythm, my story. I cooked whatever I wanted, sang off-key in the shower, rearranged the furniture just because I could, and every night I looked in the mirror and whispered, you made it. Because I did, not just through heartbreak, but through the rediscovery of who I was beneath the weight of someone else's secrets. Sometimes, the greatest apology isn't, I'm sorry, it's action, it's letting go, it's setting someone free. David's apology didn't erase the pain, but it gave me the space to heal, and for that, I'm grateful. A few weeks later, as the leaves began to turn gold and orange, I opened my mailbox and found a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name, written in careful, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single letter, neatly folded, deliberate, respectful. The name at the bottom made me pause. Ethan. For a moment I just held it in my lap. I wasn't sure if I wanted to read it, but something in my chest said this is part of the healing too. So I opened it. Dear Alina, I've written this letter a dozen times in my head. None of the versions felt right. Some were too apologetic, some too defensive. But you deserve none of those things. You deserve the truth and grace. I never meant to hurt you. In fact, for a long time I told myself I wasn't hurting you, because I wasn't trying to replace you, but now I understand that sometimes the deepest wounds come from the things we never meant, the spaces we quietly invaded, the lives we shaped by simply standing too close. I met David before you, long before, but I lost him when the world scared him back into the life that looked safe. That life was you. And instead of hating that, I respected it, because he chose a good woman. I watched him raise a family, be a husband, build a life that seemed whole because it was built with your kindness. But I also watched him wither, because he wasn't living his truth. And when he came back to me, I didn't see a cheater. I saw a broken man carrying decades of guilt and silence. I loved him. I still do. But I never asked him to stay married to you. I never asked him to lie. That choice was his, and the burden became yours for that, I'm deeply sorry. Not because I think you need to hear it, but because I needed to say it. You were more than his wife. You were his anchor, his shelter, and from what I can tell, you gave him peace, even when he couldn't return it. That takes a kind of love I will never take for granted. Thank you, Elena. For all the years you gave him. For every time you held him together when he couldn't do it himself. For letting him go without hate. If it means anything, I will spend my life loving him with honesty, the way he should have been loved all along. And I promise his memory of you will never be rewritten. You were never the mistake. You were the grace that carried him here. With quiet respect, Ethan, I folded the letter, laid it on the table, and just sat there, stunned. Still, but strangely at peace. It was the first time since everything unraveled that I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. Ethan didn't try to erase me, didn't make excuses, didn't offer pity. He saw me, and in doing so, he gave me back my dignity. That night, I made a cup of tea, lit a candle by the window, and let the wind carry the silence into something softer. Rosie curled at my feet, tail flicking like a metronome. I looked out into the night and whispered, I forgive you, all of you, even me. As a psychologist and someone who has guided countless people through heartbreak, betrayal, and family secrets, I can tell you stories like Elena's are more common than we admit. It's never just about one person's choices. It's about the ripple effect, how one secret, one lie, one fear can touch dozens of lives. And the hardest part? Sometimes the most unexpected people become the ones we rely on, or the ones who betray us most. What Elena experienced, the feeling of being used as a cover story, the shock of a best friend who knew and stayed silent, the painful realization of a husband's secret love. It's a type of emotional trauma that lingers quietly. But there's also something powerful here, something every one of us can learn. The way forward is through truth, honesty, and reclaiming your own life. Even when betrayal cuts deep, there's a path to healing. Even when someone else's actions shatter our world, we can choose to rebuild on our terms. And sometimes, the smallest gestures, the quiet apology, the letter, the freedom to live authentically can have the greatest impact. Elena's journey reminds us that honesty matters, even if it comes late. Actions often speak louder than words. Healing requires setting boundaries, reclaiming your space, and embracing self-respect. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. If you were Elena, what would you do? Would you forgive? Would you walk away? Or would you try to rebuild a new kind of relationship based on truth, even after such deep betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else in a situation they feel trapped in. And remember, healing is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it comes quietly, in letters, in moments of reflection, in decisions to live authentically. If Elena's story resonated with you, there are plenty more stories like hers waiting for you here. Stories that inspire courage, reveal hidden truths, and show that no matter your age, it's never too late to reclaim your life. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, so when the next story arrives, you can watch it, learn from it, and maybe even find the strength to face your own challenges. And if you're brave enough, scroll down and share your thoughts. Because the most powerful stories aren't just told, they're discussed, felt, and experienced together. At the end of the day, life is messy. People make choices. Some choices hurt, some heal. But the one choice we always have is how we respond. Elena chose freedom. She chose herself. And in doing so, she teaches all of us a universal lesson. Your peace is non-negotiable, your dignity is priceless, and your story is worth telling.